Hello and welcome to another edition of Knickerbocker Banter. I'm your host, as always, Harris Wishard. Here with me today, an incredible guest, Eamon McAnaney of SNY Geico SportsNite. How are you today, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to chatting Knicks hoops.
Absolutely, man. And usually when I bring somebody on, to me, it's a thrill, obviously, and I appreciate it. But to watch you do this every night and kind of learn from that craft, and now be able to get the opportunity to have you here. It really is special. So thank you for taking that time. And want to ask you about your upbringing with basketball. What did it mean in your life? And then obviously relating that to the Knicks and how that came about, your fandom in your childhood.
Yeah, I love basketball for as long as I can remember. My first love, my dad was a Notre Dame grad. So when I was a little kid, they were really good and they were on TV every weekend. It's long before ESPN and college football 24/7. So every Saturday or Sunday, they were on NBC. They had Kelly Tripucka, Orlando Woolridge, John Paxson. Went to his Final Four when I think I was 8 or 9. I forget exactly, but that was my first introduction to basketball. The Knicks weren't that great back then, but they had Michael Ray Richardson and Ray Williams, so I was a fan of that team. And then when they got Bernard King, it took off. I love Bernard King. I love those teams, even though he wasn't surrounded by the greatest bunch of players. But Bernard King and Hubie Brown had some great playoffs. The win over the Pistons in 5 games, Bernard going for about 1,000 points in Joe Louis Arena, and then even the great mighty Celtics, one of the best teams ever, they took 7 games. So that's how I really fell in love with basketball. And, of course, then Patrick Ewing in the draft lottery waited for the 90s and Pat Riley for them to become championship contenders. But that's how I fell in love with basketball, those teams, when I was a kid.
Now that's awesome stuff. And you mentioned Riley and obviously Ewing, and a lot of people we've had in here have mentioned the falling in love with John Starks and the nitty gritty team. So I love hearing about it. I caught the tail end of the 90s. So as much as I remember Ewing, it was more so Latrell Sprewell and Allen Houston that were my heroes growing up. But, obviously you're a big fan. When I was emailing you before, I called you a pro's pro because every time I watch you, I feel like you just, you're prepared. You have everything that you need. And how do you differentiate being the fan? Because being the passionate fan with, all right, now I got to do this in a calm way or deliver it in a way that I get this news out there to everybody. Is that a tough balance sometimes?
It can be, not so much the pro teams anymore. I'm 55. Don't get me wrong, I'm still into it. But, even if the Knicks won a championship, I don't think it would mean as much to me as if the Ewing Knicks won that championship when you're 25, 26, 27, and really sort of in love with that team, to use that phrase. Not that there's nothing about this team right now to dislike. It's just, it's the same when you're 55 as opposed to when you're 15 and 25. And, excuse me, you mentioned being professional about it. That's not your role. I'm not a talk show host. If I was a talk show host and you were on for 4 hours, it'd be a lot different. Part of the talk show host, you're a podcast host. That fan is part of the appeal. My role on Honda SportsNite is to be the host, to ask questions, interview Ian Begley. Afterwards, we'll let JJ and Sal be the passionate fans and all the other guys we use. But, doing this now, starting in production and now on air for about 20 years, that your role is to be a pro. It now more than ever seeps out your fandom.
Mm.
But I'm supposed to be Switzerland and neutral, so I just kind of become used to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you said, you grow up, you're in your 20s and you absolutely love the team. Now going forward, what I've mentioned a lot about this group is people that are younger, and whether, because I coach youth basketball, so I'm watching all these kids put the Knick jerseys on again, which is great, right? So it's a team that we could be proud of, just like it was in the 90s when New Yorkers wore that shirt with pride. It's great to see that again, right?
No doubt. Look, it's a very likable team. Just the other night, I guess it was, the Chicago game. That's the game you expect them to mail it in and say, all right, it's not our night. We're going to go get beat. And even though they didn't win, obviously, in a heartbreaker, it was the exact opposite. So there certainly is a little bit to this team of those 90 Knicks. Josh Hart, the guy that if he's on your team, you love. If he's on the other team, you probably don't like him so much, similar to the Stark role. So, it's a very likable team. Tibbs is a great coach, although I know the Knick fan on Twitter gets a little frustrated by him. But, the minutes police are always counting minutes. But I think Tibbs is a great coach. I like him. He doesn't give the media a whole lot, but every once in a while he's got a little sarcastic comment, which I appreciate. So I find it to be a very likable team. Plus, The other thing is the Knicks fan is desperate. I forget what the year was when Bing Bong became the thing, but they win their opener and outside the Garden. It's like they won Game 7, so it's a starved fan base, no doubt.
Yeah, I've used that word a lot, starving, right? We want it so bad, and you alluded to the sidewalk talk and the bing bong stuff. Everyone, mocking the Knick fan for celebrating the first round, but you're acting like you've been there before, but you can't, right? You can't. I mean, you want it so bad, and the fan base wants it so bad. So definitely. But you brought up something I was going to ask you about with Tibbs and the minutes. And to me, it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too. You got the old generation fans saying these guys don't play back to backs. These guys are soft. They're sitting out 60 games. And now you got some players here that not only want to play every night, and the Knicks are a little thin at the bench, but now you got people complaining about both ends of the spectrum. Where do you stand on that? And I know you just mentioned it not being as big of a deal maybe as people make it out to be, but for me, it's people talking out of both sides of their mouth a little bit with that one.
No doubt, you're definitely right. I mean, you go back and look at the minutes that Patrick Ewing and Charles Barkley and those guys played, and the amount of games they played. You'd be blown away if you're a modern fan. And I guess the 25-year-old is going to tell me to go yell at a cloud or go mow my lawn or whatever they say. But it's a different time. They just did. I think the Knicks fan now, I think, loves to fall in love with that seventh or eighth guy, whoever it was Deuce McBride, whoever it was. Tibbs is reluctant to go that deep. And now he's hamstrung by injuries. I mean, Deuce has been out for a couple of games. Obviously, they don't have any big men. So who are you going to play instead of Karl-Anthony Towns if you take him out? You really want to trust Kolek? I mean, I understand everyone loves him out of Marquette, but, he's going to have to earn Tibbs' respect. He's not just going to go give him 15 to 20 minutes a game. You started to see a lot more out of Payne, which was by design. So, I think, what we really want to see is if Payne and McBride get healthy, how much he plays them, because McBride not playing the last couple of games definitely hurt that rotation and why people play a lot more minutes than that fan would want him to. But, Tibbs is going to go 5 or 6 deep. He doesn't care about what people say, and he only cares about winning that game. Whether that's right or not, when someone gets hurt because they're playing 40 minutes, everyone will say, I told you so. But Tibbs is really only worried about that game that night and not what everyone thinks.
Well, yeah, and I agree. And also with Precious and Mitch, you're missing two guys that are trustworthy, right? And you mentioned that word, and Tibbs, he goes to up 40 one night and he plays 30 minutes. But what I think the common fan doesn't see is he could have made one silly mistake that is a Knick principle or that is a Tibbs non-negotiable, and that could have you on the bench for another week or so, whether that's right or wrong. And you might be killing a young kid's confidence, might be an argument for another day, but it's just not going to be handed out, as you've seen. And the Knicks have built the culture. It started with Tibbs and now Brunson and all that, but he was the guy that came in here and kind of flipped this thing upside down.
Completely. Very hard. And, even Randall, who's not here anymore, it's kind of funny. This team was built up by guys who aren't even here anymore, and that kind of changed the whole culture on the fly. And I think they're more talented now. I think they had to make the moves, but you started thinking that this team could go far because of Randall and Quickly and all those guys and Barrett, all those guys who aren't here anymore. So I think there's still a little gelling with this group because OG Anunoby, as good as he is, hasn't played. This group has not played a lot yet. So Tibbs is going to make sure they develop that chemistry and connection because this is the group that he's going to ride or die with in the playoffs.
Absolutely. I wanted to shift gears just for a little bit because I mentioned it before about the interviewing, and it's something that I try to pay attention to. I try to watch other people, try to be as prepared as possible, try to study stuff. But what advice would you give to someone that's trying to hone that craft and become better and better at asking questions and conducting that?
Sure. I always say you can't over-prepare, but you can overuse. Have all your notes, but if you only get to 10% of your notes, that's fine. It's all about how did the conversation go. I think the biggest thing is you go in with a plan, but you have to be ready for that plan to go out the window because the person you're interviewing is going to decide what your second question is or what your third question is. So the key is to go in ready, have a plan, but you have to listen because if their first answers your second or third question or takes you to your eighth question, you have to be ready to adjust. So listening, I think, is the biggest key. And then just asking questions, who, what, when, why, and how are the best ways to start a question because that solicits an answer. Tell me about is kind of asking too much for them. I think the key is asking a question and listening.
Mm, absolutely. I appreciate that. And obviously I'll jot it down and watch this back. And obviously, like I said, I watch SNY all the time. So it's awesome to be able to learn from others and try to build. But and you touched on who, what, where, when, why. So I ask you who, and I want to know, do you have a mentor or who would be someone that you point to in your career? Is it multiple people that either took you under their wing and gave you some things that allowed you to elevate yourself a little bit?
It's a lot of people. No one really took me under my wing, but I've asked a lot of people advice. I've sent my tape to anyone and everyone. Way back in the day when we were just getting started, I had a mutual connection, and Mike Breen was very helpful to listen to my stuff. Bob Lee, who I worked with at ESPN when I was in production, watched my tape, and so it's a long list of people. Once you get in the industry and you get to know people, you have to take advantage of those contacts. They're usually more than willing to help, but obviously they're very busy. But growing up, I always wanted to be Warner Wolf. That's how old I am. He was the legendary sports anchor at Channel 7 and then Channel 2. And then when I really, started to become a Knicks fan, I listened to Jim Carvallis on the radio. I mean, Marv is obviously a Hall of Famer, but I was, for some reason, more of a Jim Carvallis guy. So those are two guys I kind of wanted to be. And then Al Troutwig was a great studio host. I thought he had one of the greatest careers and greatest jobs ever when he was with MSG, when they had the Knicks, Rangers, and Yankees all at once. Doesn't get much better than that. And he's a pros pro. So those are people I watched growing up. And, I try to take from anyone and anyone. But, Mike Breen and Bob Lee pick out of guys who were helpful, even if it was just an email back after looking at some of my tapes.
Well, that name always rings a bell for me. I was at a broadcasting camp years ago, and Mike just the most humble guy. I think I've said it 4 or 5 times in this show. I'm blown away. You would never know he's accomplished as much as he has, being the guy that's called the most games in NBA Finals history. And I think Knicks fans, I don't think we take him for granted, but I don't think sometimes we realize how good we have it with him being behind the mic every night.
That's a great way to say it. The Knicks fan is very fortunate to have Mike Breen and Clyde and, even Kenny Albert, the quote unquote backup. But, to have the best NBA announcer in the league calling your regular season games is it's pretty awesome.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk to you about, we talk about the generational thing and your honest opinion about players, even during the regular season, because this is a topic that came up in Knicks land the other day, and hosting their own shows. Did you ever think that you would get to the point when in media where guys would be sitting down, sometimes even after games, and giving you the content right from the horse's mouth in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, certainly not 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. I mean, the traditional media that I grew up on is having to find more and more ways to be relevant, because we always used to say, hey, we're a conduit to the fan. You need to talk to us because we get, the information to the fans, and the fans are dying for information. That goes out the window now when you have social media and the player can deliver his or her own message to the fans. They don't need to go on talk radio. They don't need to do a press conference. If I can get, the message out, the fan to be connected with me and my team just by following me on social media. So now with podcasts, it is completely different. And no, I didn't see that coming. Although I have to admit, during the pandemic, when everyone was doing Zoom interviews from home, I say we're in trouble getting into the locker room. I remember one time there was a giant, I think it was Leonard Williams, but it doesn't really matter, did an interview with the media on Zoom from his house. And I'm like, we're never getting in the locker room again. And you lose a lot. You lose a lot of connection. You lose a lot of familiarity, and you lose a lot of information, because I don't want to say you get private stuff, but you get a lot of more stuff out of the subject when it's in person as opposed to virtual.
Definitely. Yeah, it was, I try not to look on Twitter when the Knicks aren't playing well. It's a very toxic place, especially with the expectation that there is. But when people started complaining about what Hart and Brunson, two of to me, the most professional guys I've seen come through the Knicks organization, guys that you don't have to worry about what they're doing on necessarily on the weekends or seem like good family men. You guys are worried about them sitting down for an hour and talking hoops. They're giving us the insight. They're giving us stories. They're bringing great guests on. So when I saw people getting all crazy about that, I knew that the Knicks fan was very impatient and delirious. I knew that already, but just especially when a team starts 3-4, that I guess everyone expected to win 70 games. I know I didn't, but I just,
I think fans are impatient, but also, I mean, fans are always want these players to 100% live, breathe, and eat the sport 24/7. They don't want to, I remember one time, a long time ago, a Met pitcher that got into an accident. He was in the backseat of a cab in Miami, and the cab got into an accident, and people were like, he should have been going out. He should have been in the hotel. I mean, come on. So people are always going to overreact, and people are always going to, you know, get upset and scream because sometimes some fans think they take it more seriously than the players do, which is obviously not true.
mm. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's Monday morning quarterback. It's, take it easy. But you've seen now with what's happened with this group, and we talk about a championship window, right? You make the moves. That's why people, I guess, are critical of, well, we gave up too many picks for this guy or this guy. I don't mind the moves. I don't mind the all-in attitude, but it also comes with the scrutiny and everything now else that's now going to follow. But have you seen the stuff about, I'm sure you'd have, but the Bridges and the picks and stuff? What's been your impression on him and eventually where he'll be down the road?
Yeah, I think we have to wait and see. I mean, he's gone from, playing a run and gun kind of offense with Phoenix to being the man at the Nets where he probably in the green light every possession. And now he's got to blend in. So it's going to take some time. I thought Josh Hart said it great. I mean, these guys are aware that people are criticizing the trade. When he came out and said he got traded for a bunch of kids who were in 12th grade now. Hey, chill out. I mean, it is all or no, right? I mean, this group, the basketball window isn't very long. I mean, the guys aren't old, but they're not young either, So, and your window isn't very long. So they did go all in. I think the Knicks fan has to be patient because the group really wasn't put together until, late in the offseason. Okay. Well, as you mentioned, Bridges was brand new and Karl Anthony Towns was brand new. They gave up a lot of the culture, a lot of the chemistry, and a lot of production, to put this team together. So that doesn't get replaced or fixed overnight. So, look, it was easy to jump on Bridges. I got to be honest, it's one of the ugliest jump shots I've ever seen. I didn't see a whole lot of them when he was in Phoenix or the Nets. I mean, obviously, we watched the Nets, but I just didn't watch that closely. I'm almost amazed sometimes when the three goes in, but he's going to obviously be productive. He's been productive throughout his whole career. They're going to find a way. I think they'll be fine. But you're right. Look, the bottom line is if this team does anything less than a Eastern Conference championship appearance, if they lose in 7 games to the Celtics, I think the Knicks fan can say, they'll be upset, obviously, but I think that, that's okay. If they somehow don't, gel and they get bounced in the second round, the Knicks fan has every right to be upset.
No question. And you mentioned Bridges' jump shot, which, again, big talking point in the Knicks community. And then now they'll mention about the campaign shot where he's getting his feet going a little sideways. I tend to come to those guys' defense as a player. I had a little bit of an unconventional release that tend to go in. But for me, I don't care if you punt it. And if it goes in the basket, it goes in the basket. And he's got, the corner three. His numbers, the thing that excites me sometimes, and I'll always look at a glass half full. That's the kind of person I am. But when he's shooting 31% from three, still making a good impact on the game. When Brunson, you're seeing some things you don't normally see from him early on in the year. And things are still kind of going well in your 6 losses. 5 of those games are right there, right? Where if it's the bounce of the ball goes a different way. I'm just waiting for things to kind of, as they have with Tibbs here. We've seen it before. Seen it with Brunson. Once we hit the ground run in January, February, that's kind of when the Knicks go streaking. So for the first part of this season, not to go exactly how people want it to go, and you're still 8-6. That's kind of the message I've been sending throughout the last few weeks.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Do you have a plant in the SNY newsroom? Because every night I hear people complain about campaign shut. The way they look at it with those two is they're in the NBA, we're not. Okay, so if that shot and that release and that form has worked for them this far, they'll be okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the Knicks are tough to read right now. I mean, okay, they're 8-6. They've won 4 out of their last 5, 3 in a row. But the Nets and Wizards are not going to be confused with any NBA elite teams. These stink. We'll see. I mean, the Bulls game, that one made no sense falling behind by a gazillion points. So, it's going to be a work in progress. The Knicks fan doesn't want to hear that. You get antsy. But, you have to, as you mentioned, wait until at least Christmas to see what kind of role they're playing or what kind of run they get on.
Yeah, the Knicks fan, I don't think we're in any position to be wanting to, hey, this has got to be aesthetically pleasing for us. I don't, it's not going to be pretty. We got to be dirty and in terms of the defense and Hart and Anunoby and guys getting after it. offensively, if it doesn't look great, if it's not pretty, I'm not going to be up in arms about it. But can we talk about Cat for a second? Because, I honestly knew what kind of player he was watching him in Minnesota, only probably about 10, 15, maybe 20 times a year, and then obviously the playoffs. But when you watch someone every night, it's different. And I didn't expect him this quickly, especially offensively. We know there's some things to be desired on the defensive end, but did you think that he would come in 14 games in and be at 26-12 and do it the way he has?
I don't know if he did that quickly, and obviously would it flipped like a switch. Like here we are wondering how long is it going to take him to jail, and then the Miami game comes and he goes to like 44. So, mm, you like you said, you always knew he could play, and he was going to be able to get his own shot. Last couple of games, he's really been attacking the last couple of highlight reel dunks. So, I expected him to do that. That's what he's been his whole career. So, obviously you thought there'd be some learning out, feeling out process, but this is what you expected from Cat. He's a he broke some record the other night. It was an obscure record, like most threes by a Knicks center in a season already. And you're like, already, it's not in there. Then you're like, who's a center? Is he really a center? But he's a scoring threat everywhere on.
No question. And he stretches the floor and gives them spacing. So I want to talk about, obviously, the assist number. I saw a stat tweeted out today that the Knicks have 6 games already with 30 assists. So what they're doing for what that's doing, I think, for their flow. And I think there was a number where they went 25 years without doing that 5 or more times in a season. So it's to me, the floor and watching now Brunson become, I want to say, the second option. I look at them as 1A, 1B offensively, but now playing more of that point guard role, setting guys up and having to maybe lean on Cat a little bit as the game goes down the wire.
Yeah, and that becomes contagious. Tom Thibodeau said something similar to that after the Wizards game. When the offense is free flowing, everyone's into it. When it gets stagnant, people just stand around. But when you're moving the ball and you're getting easy shots and everyone's involved, there's a bounce to everyone's step. And that's what's happened the last couple of games. So well, hopefully for the Knicks fan and the Knicks, that will continue. But sometimes Brunson becomes that ball dominant guy, just pounds the rock until there's 4 seconds left on the shot clock, and they go to work. So he's effective that way, but at least the poor guy's standing around. Now you have everyone involved and the offense is moving, and I think that becomes more enjoyable to play, which leads to more energy.
No question. Yeah. So now they got the trip, right? Right before. I definitely want to ask you, and I will get to City Lax in a moment and talk about my brother-in-law for a second who hooked this up, and I definitely want you to give you the floor on that. But they got the 5-game trip coming up. No KD tonight. Obviously, again, going by game, but good opportunity here to kind of create some, good momentum, continue to feel good about yourself and, play well on the road. So what do you expect now coming up in the next week or so here?
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. It's a tough road trip. You got 3 teams in there that are really good in Phoenix, the Nuggets, and the Mavericks. So it's a good test. Playing on the road's always tough. I also think, it'll be good for this team chemistry wise. People always say teams come together, we're on their road. So, you got nothing else to do but practice and play games. You're gone for a while. So I think it'll be a good test, and 3-2, 4-1, you're looking for that. Certainly want to have a winning record, but that's, you have to steal a couple one, to win in Dallas and win in Denver. Obviously you mentioned no KD, so that changes Phoenix a little bit, but they're still a good team. So, that's why 3-2 to me is a successful trip, but each game is its own entity, but you're going to learn a little bit more about the team over this road trip.
Definitely. And you don't expect to lose in Utah. You don't expect to lose in Charlotte, right? Those are games that you'd want them to take care of. You mentioned, obviously, the Phoenix game tonight. Dallas and Denver, I look at that and say, if you split those two, that's something you sign up for. So if you can go 3-2, 3-0 or 2-1 the others, but again, just build momentum, right? Build chemistry. You want to see the same positive sign maybe you've seen against the bad teams, these get-right games going forward, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I think the problem, for the impatient Knicks fan is that there's nothing distracting them now. The Jets and Giants are so bad. You're locked in on every Knicks game, and, it's the end of the world because we're already giving up our football season. It's not even Thanksgiving. But, yeah, I'm with you. Split against the big boys, and then you should be able to come home with a winning record on the trip.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned before, and I see you have the shirt on, my brother-in-law, George Clancy, shout out to him. He does a great job coaching lacrosse at MS 363 in the Bronx. Can you talk a little bit about that organization, how you got involved and what you've been able to do for them? Because it's a great cause. And obviously I appreciate seeing all the videos and texts that he sends me about it.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate giving me a chance to talk about it. So I played lacrosse growing up. I grew up in New York City where there was no lacrosse. I went away to school, so I got a chance to pick it up and play in college. And I fell in love with it. I called a lot of college lacrosse games when I was a play-by-play announcer before I moved to SNY full-time. So I have a true passion for the game, and I found out about City Lax, which is a nonprofit that funds teams in New York City public schools. Right now at the public high school level, there are nearly 70 teams with more than 3,000 students. I tell people that, and they're blown away. They have no idea that many people are playing high school lacrosse in New York City. And you mentioned Georgia's school, middle school 363. We kind of expanded our focus to create more teams in middle schools to give the younger students an opportunity to play, because that could really enhance their chance to play in high school. You know, it's still a sport that if you played before ninth grade, certainly in the city, obviously in the summer, a little different, but if you played before ninth grade, you have a leg up on people. And there are high schools out there that want students who can play sports. And, you know, if you keep your grades up and you're coming out of a middle school like middle school 363, you become a whole lot more attractive as a student, a complete student athlete, to some of the private schools and Catholic schools that have lacrosse teams. So it's a combination. I love the sport and I want to make sure more people play it or have a chance to play it. But at the same point, it does a lot more than just create an after-school activity. You talk to coaches such as George and at the high school level, they say kids love being on the team so much that they know they have to go to class and go to school to keep their grades up or they won't be able to play. It helps them both in the classroom and on the field, because being part of a team and then falling in love with the sport just completely changes your high school career and now hopefully your middle school career.
Well, that's really awesome stuff. And as somebody that, you know, as involved in the youth and has had a passion since I got out of college for that, it's just always nice to hear, right? And I know George is very involved, and just knowing what a genuine person he tells me that you are, and now just hearing that. And from afar, it looks that way too, Eamon. So I really do appreciate that. And again, your time today, you know, been trying to do this and grow this, and just everybody that gives me time. And I mentioned guys like Chris Childs, Freddie Coleman, and, you know, I'm humbled by it. And it's been such a great experience to kind of learn and grow and have friends and family support it. And now strangers support is a really cool thing, and something I didn't even know would be possible when I started last year. So I really do appreciate you, man.
No problem. Happy to come on again. Hopefully, maybe during a playoff run, you can talk about we can have me on before the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics. But keep in touch. I'll be listening, and hopefully the Knicks give us a good season. I'm pretty sure they will, but I think it'll be fun.
Absolutely. Would love to have you back. And like you said, God willing, an Eastern Conference Finals appearance. And again, appreciate you. I'll be in touch. Eamon McAnaney, appreciate it again. Thank you.